back. We're back. It's a happy Devil's Wednesday. Did you miss us? I missed you, Nick. It's only been a week. It's always been it's usually a week. We do this weekly.
Usually.
Yeah, well, this is the State of the Fan Address, episode 95, titled Ready to Get Back. I'm ready to get back. Streaming live on Facebook Live, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube Live, and Twitch on the Primetime Radio Network. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief, also Super Bowl content-in-chief down in Tampa, Nick Villano. Nick, can you believe that the Let's Go Devils podcast just took a week off? This was actually the last podcast we did. It's like we took a bye week.
It was a bye week. You know, you don't want to compete with the Super Bowl. There's no point. Let everybody watch Tom Brady's greatness. By the way, make sure you check your phone before. But yeah, no, I think that it's a very exciting time in sports. The Super Bowl just happened. You know, we're right before pitchers and catchers and baseball, and you know, and then hockey is just kind of stressful, we'll say. You know, we just found out that it looks like the Flyers-Rangers game is going to get canceled on Saturday, but there's some good news. The good news is that, you know, the Devils had 19 players on the COVID-19 protocol yesterday. Today, they had 17. Kyle Palmieri and Pavel Zacha came off the protocols. I don't know what that means. I don't know if Kyle never had it and he was just a close contact with Zajac. I don't know if Zacha never had it. I'm assuming that just because of the sheer quickness in which Zacha went on and came off, he's just a close contact. But this is all just assumptions. But the Devils still have 17 players on the list, including Nico Hischier, who hasn't been with the team, including Sami Vatanen, who was supposed to be quarantining, and he came off, and then the next day went back on, including Connor Carrick, who wrote on Instagram that I believe he was a close contact. The team informed him that he was a close contact. So the good news is, Sam, let's get this all taken care of now. Let's make the mistakes. Let's just hope and pray that nobody gets really sick. And then, based on what we've seen, we can move forward. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to get this schedule taken care of, but I think that they can do it. Baseball figured it out, and baseball was in a bigger mess than the NHL right now. The Cardinals and the Cardinals and the Marlins, right? Or the Marlins and the Phillies and the Cardinals. I don't know. There's a couple teams that just didn't play for a month. And it looks like the Devils are going to come close to that. It looks like the Sabres are going to come close to that. The Flyers hope to reopen their facility on Monday. I think that's a pipe dream. I don't think that's going to happen. But the problem is that it's all happening in this division. And if the Canadian division or the North Division, was it the Bridgestone North Division or whatever it is, if they have 0 positives and they get through the season honky-dory, do you make them wait? Do you just stretch out their postseason? Do you go by points percentage? There's a lot of questions. But the good news here is that the Devils are now getting more players off than they're putting on today. If that continues to happen, I think you can get this going by the end of the month. Then I think you have Nico Hischier back in the lineup. You kind of get to play around with that middle six if you want to keep that Jack Hughes, Andreas Johnson, and Jesper Bratt line together, which you absolutely should. That line should not move. And then you can kind of see if Nico can get Kyle Palmieri and Nikita Gusev going. Then you have Travis Zajac. And then that's where things get interesting. I wrote about the lines on pucksandpitchforks.com today. So go check that out. What I think the lines are going to be when they come back. The one line that's extremely hard is that third line. You got Travis Zajac. You're going to put him in the middle. God willing that he's okay, because he's still on the list, and he was the first guy to go on the list before Blackwood, or after Blackwood. I'm sorry. If he's okay, you put him at center, and then you have Yanni Kuokkanen, Jesper Boquist, Pavel Zacha, and one of the players. Oh, Igor Sharangovich. You're gonna have to sit two of them, and if they want to keep two defensemen on in the owner's box, then you gotta send one on the taxi squad. You're probably going to send either Sharangovich or Boquist to the taxi squad, because you don't want to worry about sending Kuokkanen through waivers, and you definitely don't want to send Zacha through waivers. I know a lot of people would be happy if he was gone for free, but you can't lose an asset like that for nothing.
Yeah, so, I mean, he was a 6th overall pick in 2015. I mean, you can't be just giving away for nothing. But then again, how much is another team willing to give for Zacha?
Yeah, I think that's the problem. I think that a lot of people made the joke that when I put out like, oh, would anybody be interested in Sam Bennett? And I wouldn't be. I don't think he's the kind of player that you'd want. I'd rather take a chance on Noah Hannafin. I know a lot of advanced statisticians hate him and hate his game. I think he can be fixed. He just had so much talent coming out of the draft. So if I'm going to take a flyer on somebody that's not Sam Bennett, it's going to be Noah Hannafin from the Flames. But a lot of people made the joke, just trade Zacha for Bennett straight up, because they're both just really struggling high picks in the draft to have talent. And I was like, that's kind of funny, but again, it's not something I would do personally. There's a lot of interesting things out there. Obviously, the Devils can't do anything until they get this COVID thing under control. They get back on the ice. They kind of figure out where they are. Right now, if they do points percentage, Sam, we're in the playoffs. We're 4th in the East, which is nice, because the East is very good this year. So for us to still sit in that 4th position, I have high hopes. We survived the Blackwood sickness, and that was something that didn't seem likely. You had to go with Wedgwood and Comrie. Now you got Aaron Dell in the fray.
Did Comrie go back? Did Comrie go on the COVID list today? Did I see that?
He went on yesterday. Or the day before.
Okay.
He's on the list. That's all you need to know. He's on the list right now. So Comrie's there. And it is what it is. But we haven't had Devils hockey in a couple weeks, but we still have a fun show for you tonight. We got Scott Wheeler from The Athletic. I've been kind of working him for a couple weeks to try to see when we can get him on. His number 1 prospect pool in the league went up today, and it wasn't the Devils. I was very upset. And the Devils actually weren't in the top 10. So we'll talk to him about it. I want to know, what's the logic here? Are you looking at upside? Are you looking at NHL probability? Are you looking at what are you looking at here? And I have a couple questions about a couple specific prospects. He has Ty Smith on the list, and he's not number 1. So those are a couple things that we'll be talking to him in 5 minutes. And I'm really excited to kind of get into the prospects. Sam, I like numbers. I like prospects. I like bringing those guys on this show, because I am not as I can't talk about it like they can. I don't eat, sleep, and breathe it. I can write about it. I feel like I can write intelligently with a lot of research. But these guys know this like the back of their hands, and I love talking to them about it, because I can spew out any question. I can give them follow-ups that weren't on the list that I send them, and they're just like, I got it. I'm ready. So I love talking to these guys. Scott Wheeler is one of the best. Those Athletic guys, they've put together a really good national NHL writing team, and Scott Wheeler's on that team, and he's one of the better prospect writers in the game. So I'm excited to talk to Scott. But Sam, you love listening about the prospects. You love listening to the young guys.
I was just listening to you before. You may want to check your text message. I fixed the problem.
Thank you.
Whoops. Hey, you know what? You pay attention to details, and then I just fix it. Now, if anybody in the audience on Facebook Live, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube Live, and Twitch can figure out what I fixed, you'll get some prize from us. Anyway, yeah, so we're going to have Scott Wheeler on very soon, and talking prospects. Kevin Ball is making his debut today. He's a big man.
It's already happening.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, it's already happened. You know what I mean? Because when I read that, it's like, oh, so wearing number 88, I like that. When I think of 88, I think of size. I think of Gary Howitt, original Devil, wearing number 88. The first NHL player to ever wear number 88, by the way. The NHL encyclopedia is wrong. They haven't listed Eric Lindros. That's not true.
Incorrect.
Gary Howitt, number 88. There is photographic evidence, and it happened in 1982.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, and if you don't believe me, ask Gary Howitt. He would know. Maybe Chico would know, but yeah, you never know.
Maybe we'll have to try to get Gary Howitt on the show. Maybe we'll track him down.
Yeah, he's retired. He's retired in Phoenix, Arizona, right now.
Why do you know
that? Because Gary and I happen to be personal friends back in the day. You know, hey, if you know a Devil. Yeah, so he.
So why don't you get him on my show? Get him on my show.
He didn't give me his phone number. He didn't give me his phone number.
Well, you're not. Whatever, Sam.
You know those Western Canadian, guys. They're straight shooters. They'll be like, you just hit me up whenever. But can I get your number? No.
No boy.
Anyway, all right. So you want to talk to social media? I'll try to get Scott on.
Sounds good.
All right.
Benji, don't be mentioning Tony DeAngelo. I want nothing to do with Tony DeAngelo. Get him. He's not good at hockey, let alone all the other baggage. Tony DeAngelo is not a good defenseman. We have 7 offensive defensemen that we could play over him right now. Get Tony DeAngelo away from me. Vince Dunn would be interesting though. Craig Best says he wants to package Zaka and Butcher, but what are you getting? You package Zaka and Butcher for a 3rd round pick? What? It's bad asset management. It just is. Butcher's, I don't know what's going on with him. I really just want to see him on the ice. And when that left side is very much good. You got Kulikov, you got Smith, you got Murray, and that's not going anywhere. Butcher's a good depth piece. He was fine last year, I guess. He was okay. I mean, he wasn't good. He had cement shoes sometimes, which was, you got to move your feet a little bit more, especially when you're a smaller guy like Butcher is. I just don't. The reason why I never gave up on Michael McLeod is because of what I saw from him from a talent standpoint. What I saw from Butcher from a talent standpoint 2 years ago, I can't just give up on him. Something's there. I don't know where it went. And sometimes it's just gone, and it never comes back. And that's a reality of the sport of hockey. But sometimes it's gone, and then it does come back. We saw that with, the biggest example is Nathan McKinnon. Nathan McKinnon was good. Then he was kind of bad. And then now he's, top 3 best players in the league, undoubtedly. It's him, Connor, Sidney Crosby, in whatever order you want to put them. So I don't want to give up on a guy like Butcher. Butcher's not in his league. I'm just giving an example. But I don't want to give up on a guy like Butcher. He's just not – it's not in a place where – he needs to be, sent to Siberia. It's not in a situation where it was Kevin Rooney or John Hayden last year, where there's just no room for the future of this franchise. The Devils have room for a Butcher. He fits in that age range. He's been good before. It just I don't think John Hines did him any favors and kind of really hurt his development. I think this Lindy Ruff system will work for him. I think that this fast attacking system will work. But I think it's just going to take some time. I think it's going to, maybe he just needs some more time to adapt to the system. I don't think you just throw away Butcher. But Sam is
No, you don't throw him away. Well, I'm definitely back. Definitely back. I'm a big fan of The Athletic. You know why I'm a big fan of The Athletic? Aside from the in-depth analysis and the long-form written articles that they provide. But when you subscribe... What's that?
Is it the coupon codes?
Well, yeah. When you subscribe, not only do I get Corey Masek, I get everybody else as well. Yep. And our next guest is from The Athletic. We're going to be talking about prospects. His name is Scott Wheeler. You can find him on Twitter at Scott C. Wheeler. Scott, you're on with Nick and Sam. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. I've just got the Leafs Habs game on mute here at my place in Toronto and enjoying some live hockey and waiting to hop on with you guys.
Yeah, I mean that's like the big game tonight. I saw some people compare like 2 big games tonight. I'm like, there's one big game, and then there's Boston, New York. Everybody's here to see Toronto, Montreal, 2 of the best teams in the league. But yeah, and it's good to have live hockey back on the TV, even though unfortunately the Devils are not participating in that right now.
Yeah, but, it's been a ton of fun for me, and I just enjoyed flipping it on. So
yeah, and that high powered hockey is I'm curious about Montreal, but we'll give them time to see if they can keep this together. They've done a really good job so far. But the reason why we have you on, Scott, and it just kind of worked out because we were always kind of circling this date, and it worked out because we don't have Devils hockey to talk about, but we have prospects to talk about. There's players all over the world playing for the Devils or playing, within the Devils organization. There's a lot to talk about with them. There's a lot going on with them. Some have gone way up. Some have kind of, not reached the expectations that we had for them at World Juniors. So I'm really excited to have you on. Scott, the first person I want to talk about, and this kind of circles around your piece. You wrote about the Devils, I believe it was last week, as part of your series of top prospect systems in the NHL. You kind of did one piece on each team in the league. The Devils fell to 11th, which I was interested in. I thought that was low personally, but I understand your logic because I saw the teams ahead of them, and it kind of seems like, with Hughes and Nico Hischier being on the team and them not counting, that obviously is going to hurt their ranking a little bit when those first-round picks aren't there. But the one thing I was most curious about in that piece is number 1. So I'm going to jump right to the main event, and that's you ranking Alexander Holtz over Ty Smith. So I'm just kind of curious of what caused you to make that decision? What caused you to put Holtz over Smith at number 1?
Well, I think ultimately for me, with all of these kids, it comes down to upside. And that isn't to say that there isn't tremendous upside in Ty Smith. We're already seeing it this year. And I think he's having more of an impact than anyone expected, including myself. And I was higher on him in his draft year than most and believed he was an excellent pick for the Devils, and half expected him to challenge for a roster spot more than he did last year. So it's nice to see him sort of grabbing the bull by the horns and playing as well as he has this year. But Alexander's a different cut. He's a different tier of prospect. I think he's a different tier of potential young player. And in his prime, he's one of, half a dozen players outside of the NHL who I think has a chance to score 40 goals in the league. It's a pretty elite company. You're talking about Holtz. You're talking about Cole Caulfield. You're talking about Arthur Kaliev. It's a short list of players with his shooting skill who can do what he can inside the offensive zone. And then I've also always argued that he's actually a much better playmaker than I think he often gets credit for because he played on those national program teams with Lucas Raymond, and they were kind of the passer and the shooter that I think he was a little bit typecast and a little bit miscast in that way. So I just think he's a fabulous player. I think he's a player who will thrive with the Jack Hughes or with a Nico and play off of them incredibly well and help out the power play. And I think he's got a chance to be a true first-line forward in the league. So that ultimately, I think, it gives an organization more value than what Ty Smith is, which is probably a very good number 2 or number 3 defenseman on a team, but not likely that sort of Norris caliber, clear-cut number 1.
Oh, that's fair. I'll take that answer. That's definitely fair. Speaking of Holtz, I'm just curious. Kind of going a sidebar here. You said that he kind of had that relationship with Raymond. He was a shooter. Raymond was a passer. You look at like the centers that the Devils have with Nico and Hughes. I would assume he fits more with Hughes. That's just kind of like me spitballing, thinking off the top of my head. If he does fit with Hughes, do you think that's going to be a similar relationship where he's just going to be expected to be almost like a better Kyle Palmieri kind of situation?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was the goal. I'm sure that was the goal for the Devils going into that pick was here's the trigger man. Here's the guy that can play with Jack and make Jack better. And he's also a stronger kid than Jack. He's going to be more of a presence along the wall and in puck retrieval. And that kind of quality also helps a player like Jack Hughes thrive and play with his speed off the puck and all of that. So no, I think you're bang on. I do think it's stylistically in theory. I mean, you never know until these guys actually get on the ice together and you start seeing how they complement each other. But I think in theory, at this point in time, you have to say that he's likely a much better fit with Jack than he is with Nico.
So let's go back a month. Looking at World Juniors, there is so much hope for the Devils and their prospects in World Juniors. Holtz, Mukmadulin, Moynihan, and Mercer, mainly among them. But it seemed like overall, you have a much better eye for these things. But from what I saw, I didn't get that taking over the tournament from any of them. Obviously, Mercer was knocked down to the 4th line for a stacked Team Canada team. But Holtz especially just seemed like he didn't get up there to where I expected and where a lot of from your community, the prospect analytics community, expected him to get to. So I'm curious of what are your thoughts on the Devils prospects overall at that World Juniors tournament?
Yeah, it was a bit of a mixed bag. Holtz and Raymond were asked to do a lot on that team, which lost William Eklund and Henrik Karlsson before the tournament. So that's 3 or 2 players at least that are sort of locks inside your top 6. Carl Henriksen is that would have been the first line center on that team with Raymond and Holtz. Eklund probably anchored that second line for them. So it just put a little bit more pressure on them. They couldn't play the matchup game. They couldn't free up Holtz and Raymond like they probably wanted to. And it meant that they were playing against the best players every night. And Holtz, I thought, actually did a really good job getting to his spot. I wrote at the end of the tournament that I felt like he was a little bit snake-bitten, obviously near the top of the tournament in shots on goal and shots per game. And a lot of those chances came from the home plate area. And I thought he looked physically imposing on the forecheck. He was finishing his checks. And so I actually thought it was a decent tournament. It certainly wasn't a tournament that exceeded expectations. I thought coming in that certainly those 2 kids, if Sweden was going to perform and be in the medal conversation, that those 2 kids had to be among the 5 best players in the tournament, and certainly neither of them were. So maybe a little bit disappointing, but I thought he was fine. And then you go down the list. Mercer, I thought, exceeded expectations, given that he started as the 13th forward on that roster and sort of worked his way into a more prominent role. He was always going to be someone for Andre Tourigny, who he felt like he could just plug and play on any line. I think that's exactly what happened. And then he found chemistry on that 4th line with Suzuki and Tomasino, and I thought they were one of Canada's best lines in the tournament. So Mercer was exactly as advertised. Mukmadulin, I mean, it was a mixed bag, which is kind of what you expect out of Shakir. I thought he looked better than maybe his worst plays looked. His worst plays were pretty ugly. There were a couple of pivots, a couple of odd man rushes that he really struggled to defend. But on the whole, I thought he was fine on a Russian defense that really lacked a sort of playmaking quality for that team that I think ultimately held that team back. And you mentioned some of the others, but Moynihan got hurt. Jaromir Pitlick got hurt, so that's kind of a write-off for both of those kids. And then Arseny Gricic, who you didn't mention, I thought he was very good for Russia and kind of gave them a playmaking quality that they lacked throughout their lineup, and made some plays with the puck, and wasn't a star in the tournament, but I thought he was one of the better Russian forwards. So I think that's a positive for him as well.
Yeah, I think Gritsik is definitely the player that exceeded the expectations of the Devils prospects and probably went up on a lot of prospects lists. Did that performance actually have him go up on your list on the Devils list that you had?
I don't know. I don't know whether it had a pronounced influence. I think he probably would have been in more or less that same tier on their depth chart for me either way, kind of in that 15 to 20 range at the back quarter of my top 20 list for their prospects. And that speaks to their depth more than anything else. He would probably be closer to 10, 11, 12 with some other organizations. But no, I don't think it had a pronounced sort of impact on how I view Arseni as a player. He kind of looks like himself.
So I'm curious of maybe your thought process on how you rank these players. Are you looking at just straight up NHL upside, or are you looking at like where they are today?
Ooh, good question. It's definitely more upside than where they're at today. I think where they're at today certainly enters your focus. It's hard not to be drawn to the players that are maybe a little bit closer to the NHL, but I don't want that to be shading my expectations for these kids too much, because I think then that disadvantages the 18 to 19-year-olds in favor of the 21, 22-year-olds who've played AHL games or have maybe played an NHL game or two. So it still ultimately is about projection, and then it ultimately within that is about upside. I tend to prefer players who, even if they're less likely of making it, prefer players who have a chance to play inside the top 4 or inside the top 9. I'm not looking for those depth pieces. As sure as they may be, those aren't the players that I'm drawn to, because I think ultimately those players are not the kind of players teams should be targeting in the draft. I think teams in the draft should be looking to identify talent. They should be looking to try and find the diamond in the rough. And you can fill around the margins through free agency every summer with cheap players who are readily available into August and September and hang around on the market. You can fill those needs via trades as well. So I'm not too worried about the sort of players with the depth qualities who are sure things. I tend to be more concerned with players who I think have a chance to really have a star quality, and players that can hang on to the puck. You have to be able to play with the puck on your stick now. And increasingly the give and go forecheck-in types have less and less value.
Yeah, your ranking, there's a lot of really interesting rankings within your rankings. I'm looking at your article right now, and just, there's some players on the NHL team right now who are lower than some players who are, arguably far away from the NHL. So it's a very interesting list. I love reading your stuff, and especially when you write about the Devils. So for all the fans out there, if you haven't subscribed to The Athletic, I don't know why we keep telling you to, but Scott Wheeler's another great read if you want to know about the young Devils. I want to know who, when you were researching the Devils and you were looking at their players, and you come out, I looked at last year's list too, just to kind of get an idea of how you format this and everything else. And, you had a couple guys rise and fall from last year, which is going to happen. But I'm curious if who, while you were researching, you were surprised either what you were forced to move down the list, or maybe you were forced to move up. Who was somebody you were surprised at the results?
I don't know whether there was anyone that I was surprised at per se. I think the one player that has kind of surprised me over the last couple of years in terms of maybe not progressing like I expected he would is probably Arni Talvidi. He's a kid who I really thought quite highly of him before he was seriously injured in his freshman year at Penn State, and it just hasn't been as easy for him. It hasn't come as naturally for him since, even as he's gotten older and stronger and filled out a little bit. He's a very heavy player now on the puck at that level. So maybe that's the one player who I think has disappointed me per se over the last couple of seasons, but I don't know whether there was anything in this most recent round of viewings and research and asking around that really caught my eye.
And Telvidi is a player I was super high on. It just seems like after that knee injury, he got it in the gold medal game. Has he been not the same since then? Is that kind of what you're assessing too?
I don't know whether not the same is the right word, but he just hasn't. I would probably argue that he's been too much the same. He just hasn't found that next level. You want players to take that next step to get to that next echelon, and that just hasn't necessarily sort of been the case for him. I think he's still a very impactful college hockey player. He's the kind of player that could play in the AHL no problem next year, but is he going to be sort of one of those players who immediately challenges for an NHL job out of camp? I'm not sure he's going to be that player at this point. And I would have said that a couple of years ago, I would have expected him to be a little bit further along, or maybe a little bit closer to that level.
Yeah, and I think that the Devils are going to eventually get into a space where they have too many of these prospects, these AHL tweeners, bottom six, NHL possible guys, and I think they're going to start making moves to move some of them. And I think Telvidi is a guy that I think other teams are going to think that they could make something with. His value is lower than it was a couple of years ago, so I could kind of see that guy on the move. A player that you were high on, that I've gone back and forth about, is Graham Clark. The wicked shot, he can score goals at will, but with goal scorers comes inconsistency sometimes, and obviously there's that giant injury history that is sitting over his head as well with the shoulders. I believe both of his shoulders have gotten operated on. I'd have to double check that, but you have him ranked 9th. You have him ahead of Yanni Kuokkanen. You have him ahead of Igor Sharangovich, who are both on the NHL team right now. A very interesting spot for Graham Clark. So kind of, where's your upside for Clark there?
Well, I think he's got to be, he has to be at his ceiling a complimentary sort of 20, 25 goal scorer who can contribute 40 points a year. I don't think he's going to be a star in the NHL, but I also don't see him as a depth sort of tweener type and that kind of player that we had talked about. I think he has an opportunity to be a little bit more than that, to be a shot threat, to play on your second power play unit, and to play a sort of push and pop off of the puck, catch and release style game where he can score some goals inside the offensive zone. And certainly last year's shoulder surgery, that was a tough blow for him. That was a key point in a key season with the best team in the OHL. They were poised to go to the Memorial Cup, obviously before the cancellation and all of that. And he looked great at the start of the year. He was kind of a goal per game player in those first few games, and he looked like himself, and he looked like he was really coming into his own. So that played into it. And then again, at Team Canada's selection camp, I watched all 4 of their scrimmages, their red and white scrimmages, before they selected their team. And he was one of the 2 or 3 players, probably alongside Jamison Rees, who was also cut, who I expected to make the team out of camp and had not expected that to happen prior, just based off of how he played. He played as well as he could, creating and scoring in all 4 goals, or all 4 games, I should say. And I thought he had an exceptional camp, and they did too, but he was always a long shot to make that team. They ultimately went with players that they were a little bit more comfortable with and players that had a longer track record than he had, but he didn't look out of touch playing with Dylan Cousins and others on the lines that they placed him on in camp. So the combination of that and just the fact that I think he can really shoot and score, and that's a quality that will stick with him and give him an opportunity to progress. And I think he's just a good sort of north-south player. So there's not a creative element to him. He's not a great playmaker. All of that is true. But I do think there are some NHL qualities there that might make him that kind of middle six complementary piece.
Yeah, and it just kind of shows the Devils' ability to find those diamonds in the rough. They, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th rounders who've contributed at a high level wherever they are, whether that's on the NHL team with the Devils or in Binghamton or, in their juniors or overseas. So, which probably brings me to my final question to you, Scott, is why 11? I've seen a lot of places when you add Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, they have the Devils 1 or 2. Obviously, you take them off. The talent level drops significantly, but it's still a very good prospect pool. And you said yourself, it's very deep. There's some high-end talent with an A prospect in Alexander Holtz. So what caused you to put the Devils all the way down to 11?
I think it's really just less about the depth and more about the sort of quality of the 3 or 4 players immediately after Alexander Holtz. When you look at the teams that ranked sort of in the top 5 of this year's project, you're looking at teams that have not just an Alexander Holtz and a Ty Smith, but maybe 3 more players the quality of a Ty Smith. So that isn't a knock on Dawson Mercer or Nolan Foote or Riley Walsh, who are kind of in that 3 to 5 range on my list for the Devils. But I don't think that those 3 players have that same sort of quality as someone like a Ty Smith, or you look at the other organizations, players like Drake Batherson, players like Jake Sanderson, those 2 kids in Ottawa, and then, I mean, Los Angeles and New York, the Nils Lundqvist, the Keandre Millers, those players are a cut above a Dawson Mercer or a Nolan Foote or a Riley Walsh. So I think that was more or less the deciding factor. I like their depth. I like Holtz as a number 1 prospect. I think he's sort of in that same tier as all of those prospects up at the top, but outside of maybe an Alexis Lafreniere or a Tim Stützle. But that's the kind of determining factor, I think, for me with the Devils, was just that sort of star quality depth at the top maybe isn't quite there. Dawson Mercer is going to be a good second or third line player. Nolan Foote's going to be a good second or third line player, but they're not going to play at the very, very top of your lineup. They're not going to be making $7 or $8 million a year at their prime.
So before I let you go, I want to send you off on a positive note and get everybody excited to go and read your article in The Athletic. So this year's draft, a very weird situation happened, 18, 19, 20. The Rangers went up and took Braden Schneider in between the Devils' 2 picks. My whole point, I know a lot of Devils fans wanted them to take Schneider. And I'm going a little off the cuff here, so I apologize for that. But my whole point was that I think the Rangers would have taken Mercer because he was a much bigger need for the Rangers. A lot of people wanted the Devils to take Schneider and then just hope whatever 20. I think the Devils made the right decision with Mercer at an 18. Do you agree, or do you think that the Devils should have went with Schneider?
I agree. I think Dawson Mercer is a better prospect than Braden Schneider. I had Braden Schneider kind of in the late 20s, early 30s on my board throughout last year, my draft board, and I had Dawson Mercer kind of in the late teens where they got him. So I think they were more or less in the same group of prospects, kind of from that 15 to 30 range, but I did have Dawson at the front end of that range and Schneider maybe a little bit closer to the back. So I think Mercer is a better player.
All right, Scott, here's the point where you get to plug what you're doing on The Athletic. I'm sure you're going to take a breather because you literally just got done ranking all 30 teams' prospects with, it looked like 2,000-word pieces on each one. But just do real quick, just a plug of everything you got going on over there at The Athletic.
Well, yeah, you said it, but it's my biggest project of the year. It's 31 pool rankings in 30 days. We released the last 2 on the same day, and that got released yesterday. And today was kind of my first day off, dating back to before the World Juniors. It's been 2 straight months of working every single day on this project, and then I was in Edmonton for the World Juniors. So I haven't really had a breather here, and took today off to just sit and watch some TV and lie on my couch, and back at it tomorrow for a Q&A to kind of put a bow on this project. We're going to do a live Q&A at The Athletic. But if you haven't checked out the project and you'd like to read more about the Devils' pool, check out The Athletic and give us a shot. And you won't be disappointed with Corey Massasak's coverage either. He's a star.
We love Corey. We love Corey. He comes on here all the time too, and he's one of the smartest people in hockey. I'm just happy we get him as the Devils because usually we get the short end of the stick when it comes to tri-state area hockey coverage. So I feel very lucky that Corey's around. Scott, thanks so much for coming on your day off. I didn't realize that we bothered you on your day off, but you were great. I can't wait to have you on again. But yeah, we'll talk to you soon, Scott. Thanks so much.
Cool. Thanks.
That is Scott Wheeler, prospects writer of The Athletic, on his day off, coming on to our podcast, The State of the Fan Address. I liked his analysis. Disagree with some, but he won me over when he said that Dawson Mercer was a better pick at that 18th spot and not risk it.
Don't. You got it. The Devils' strategy has always benefited when they went for best player available. It's always benefited. The places where the Devils fell off the map under Lou Lamoriello, and I believe it was Conti, right?
Yep.
Where they fell off the map is when they overthought the process and thought, I don't know if it was an I know better thought process or it was a, whatever. And Ray Shero is the same way. When he let the board fall to him, he made his best picks. When he went after the guy he wanted, those picks usually don't work out. When you fall in love with a prospect beyond what he already is, that's where you make the mistakes. So you see that in a lot of players. Sharon Govich is another case, 5th-round pick in the NHL for now. I do think he needs some seasoning, Sam. I think he's going to be a Rob Lepolis call within the next couple of weeks once, we figure out this virus situation. But he's still a great pick. I think he's going to be an NHL regular next year. I think he just needs a little more seasoning. And I think Scott Wheeler, based on where he had him, spoiler, no spoiler, that's a tease alert, where Scott Wheeler had him. I think Scott thinks that he needs a little seasoning too. But still a great prospect pool. Don't take the 11 as if it's bashing the prospect pool, because we were 17 last year on Scott's list, and he still said the depth is there. All 20 of the players on last year's list, he said, these could all make the NHL. And this year, he gave us 2 honorable mentions. And I think that his thought process would be the same. All of these players can make the NHL. They have that quality, depending on how their progression goes and their development goes. It's really fun to fall in love with prospects. I love falling in love with prospects. Beer Baron fell in love with McLeod, and it was rough there for a couple seasons. But then you get to the benefit when it works out, like it is right now, and you get to be. It's almost like watching your kid play. You're beating the drum for him. You got to make some excuses for him sometimes, but other times when he's really playing well, it feels like something. You take more ownership of it when a prospect does well in the NHL.
Well, I like the prospects. I mean, it's always been enjoyable to see late round or undrafted players that come through the system, like Brian Rafalski or John Madden.
Andy Green, David
Andy
Clarkson.
Green.
The Devils have had a lot of them.
But Detroit, what separated Detroit and the Devils 20 years ago, because both won 3 cups in a short amount of time together, practically in a 10-year period, was the later round picks. Ken Holland picking Pavel Datsyuk in the late rounds, and also Henrik Zetterberg. I mean, those picks count, and, the Devils, I mean, they did pretty well, but not as well as Detroit in the later rounds. And, Detroit, won more cups later in that decade. So, again, it's scouting. I think what the Devils did by drafting Mercer, I mean, right now in New York, it's not all hunky-dory right now. That's to be expected, though. I mean, it's kind of like the Ranger fans are going through what we were going through last year in some respects. You can't expect your first overall pick to just like dominate the league right from the get-go. You know,
and I think I honest to goodness think that Jack Hughes' struggles helped Lafreniere, because I haven't heard a ton about his struggles. They're out there, people are talking about it, but it's not as prevalent as I think it would have been if Hughes was not a overall disappointment as a rookie himself. If Hughes came in like Austin Matthews last year, and then Lafreniere comes in with a whimper, then the screams are going to be a little bit louder. And the Rangers, they do have a good prospect pool. The Rangers
they're deep,
are going to get,
I think,
into a situation, and I talked about Tony DeAngelo and how I want nothing to do with him. The reason why the Rangers can just throw away Tony DeAngelo, I mean, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say they were going to do it no matter how good their prospect pool is. It doesn't matter, whatever. He's not good in the locker room. He's not good with this or that. But it makes it a much easier decision when you have 3 or 4 defensive prospects who could probably play in the NHL. And they have some really good prospects all over the place. And I think the Devils are better set up taking out just taking prospects, not looking at Artemi Panarin and like the free agents. I think the Devils are better set up for long-term success because you know what you got in Blackwood. You know somewhat what you got in Nico. And Jack Hughes is really showing something. A lot of the prospects for the Rangers at the center, there's still some question marks around them. Chittle and a couple other guys. But Panarin changes things because Panarin's an MVP candidate almost every year. He's really, 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 really good. So that changes things a little bit in their favor. The Devils don't have that. And I don't know. The only way the Devils are going to get that is if they go crazy on the trade market. Or if they sign Patrick Laine. Which, I mean, you still got to wait a couple of years for that. Or you could trade for Laine. I still think that the Blue Jackets really wanted Roslovic, and they took Laine because they're eventually going to spin him for assets because it just doesn't work with Torts. So I think the Devils could still make a deal like that, and that can put them up a level if they get a Laine. Laine, and I think Panarin, when you look at the scale of overall players, the better player, but Laine is the better scorer, which fills a need that the Devils have. The Devils are getting a lot of secondary scoring, but just that elite scoring, I don't think you can rely on Andreas Johnson to do that, and Palmieri and Gusev just aren't providing that right now. So if you get a Laine, that takes things up a notch. I don't know if it's a move you make this season. I don't think it's an in-season move, but if you call Columbus and they ask for just a bevy of prospects, like say they ask for, I mean, I don't think you give them Holtz because I don't think you need to. Holtz is too good, and he might be better than Laine in 2 or 3 years, just because he has that second part of his game with the passing and with the big body that he can take pucks in the corner. And then he also has that scoring ability where Scott said he could score 40 goals in a season. One of the few players not in the NHL that has that ability. But so you had Laine, right? And you put Laine with Nico, who can make up a little bit for his defensive lapses. Then you could kind of take a chance and resign Palmieri. And Palmieri's value is a little low right now. Like, say, if you go to Palmieri right now and you offer him a 4-year extension when he has 0 goals right now, right?
He doesn't have many. I think he's struggling.
So if you go and you offer him an extension, you're like, listen, we've seen you before. We've seen what you've done. Here's 4 by 4. 4 years, $4 million a year. If you're Palmieri and you're sweating what you're doing in your free agent year, you consider it, right? I'd even
Yeah.
accept them giving him 4x5 right now. Give him 4 years, $20 million total. He gets a little bit of a raise, right? That escrow's going down next year. That ridiculous. I think it was at 20% this year. That escrow's going down next year. So he'll get more money on his dollar. He gets to stay in New Jersey where his family lives. I think that you can make that work. And then you go after Line A, you trade prospects and maybe a first-round pick, depending on what year it would be. I would be very hesitant to trade this year's because things can still go badly for the Devils. But, you got to do things to make those deals work. So you throw a first-round pick, you throw 3-4 prospects. Maybe you add a Pavel Zacha to that deal because that seems like a John Tortorella type of player. And it would be good prospects. I'm trying to think, we would probably see Walsh in that deal. You probably see it would have to be,
Hey,
I don't know.
Did you see his goal the other night?
Liney's or Walsh's?
Walsh's.
Yeah, I saw Walsh's goal. It was good.
It was.
He scored the overtime winner.
Yeah.
So
you know what? Because the Bing Devils, they're the only ones playing right now. And just checking some of those highlights out. What's the score right now?
I think did Cini just win it, or did he tie it? I think he won it. I think Brett Cini just won the game.
Well, you see,
I don't know. It's very confusing. The tweets might not be in order. It just says goal, but then there's another one that says overtime. So I don't know, and I don't see the other goal. Binghamton.
We'll have to text Rob Lapolis, but I think he's in the middle of doing the game right now.
Oh, they won. Binghamton's 2-0.
Right.
Brett Cini, overtime goal. Huge.
See, this gives me hope because we talked about this last year, how they were hot to end the season before the season was ripped from them. But the Bing Devils are learning how and continuing how to win. To me, it's all about winning. It's winning. I'll tell you, I'm going to say something controversial here, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
You could throw the analytics, you can make predictions, you could, make projections and all that. But at the end of the day, the only thing that really counts is that W. And just listening to the chatter amongst Nashville Predator fans, I don't think they're too happy with John Hines right now. I don't know if we should get into that, but I will say right now the Devils are looking good. I'm glad that Pittsburgh has settled their their situation with the GM and president of the team, Brian Burke, and Ron Hextall as GM. I'll tell you, I like the Hextall move. Brian Burke, if you're into win it now, I think he's a good GM, but, I think we may be a little worried a little bit because I have a lot of respect for both of them,
Yeah.
But they're not taking Tommy Fitz, which is good.
Yeah, no, Tommy Fitz
saw
is
those
staying.
rumors.
That's huge. That's the other big headline from this week is that Tommy Fitz isn't going anywhere. And I don't think he was. I just really Pittsburgh's in a bad way, Sam. They got one of the worst prospect pools in the league. They have only 4 picks this year, and they're missing their first round pick. That's going to Minnesota.
Hey, I got to make a shout out.
Do it.
Do you mind if I make a shout out? In the Facebook group, Patricia Kane is actually Coach Kane, professor at the wonderful Penn State University, actually saying hello. So I just want to say hello back because he was a communications professor. So he's probably very proud that I'm communicating with Facebook Live right now using some of the skills.
Let's talk about Let's talk about Penn State communications for a second. Hey, did you know that they've had a player in the Super Bowl except for 5?
Oh yeah.
Wait. I gotta do it correctly. Penn State has had a player in every Super Bowl except for 5. Is that right? Is that right?
You know right? What? Yep, you did it exactly right, and that's how we communicate at Penn State. You know, in the state of Pennsylvania, all the other schools and teams are like rah 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 rah, and then Penn State football fans are like, "I'm going to kill you, you suck."
Yeah, y'all are aggressive.
We are. Yeah,
we're just aggressive.
We're just like hockey moms, We just go crazy.
So aggressive.
I know. Just don't talk about. You can make fun of my Devils. You can make fun of me. You can bully me. But you talk about Penn State football. That's some serious stuff.
Yeah. We'll move on then, because I have some not nice things to say. But I had to bring it up because I saw it and I thought of you. I was like. I need to know what Sam Wu thinks about this graphic. Let's just bury the lead.
I saw that and I laughed so hard because it was just like so obvious Penn State that they would do. It's like, well, I got something to say, but it's kind of I shouldn't really say it on air. I'll say it off air because I think it's funny.
Okay,
but go ahead. Don't let me interrupt you.
No, you're fine. And it's almost game time. And I got a game that could go very wrong, Sam, because it's about prospects. I figure with Scott Wheeler coming on tonight, we should talk prospects and we should have the game be about prospects.
Yep.
And I know that's not your forte, but I feel like you can piece something together. You'll figure it out. It's you and Dave Brown. Do you have Dave's number? Do you need me to send it to you while we're talking?
Yeah, why don't you send it over? Now, Craig Best says, I miss Erica and her red leather. Let me tell you something. When Erica Wachter of MSG Networks doing the Devils games, when she rocks the red leather, the Devils win every single time. Every single time, and fans are noticing. I actually texted Erica the other day about that. About her lucky red leather. Anytime she rocks that, boom. And then when we did the post-game podcast, which we will resume once the Devils are resuming, tomorrow I should have been down in Philadelphia at Chickies and Pete's outside the Wells Fargo Center doing like live post-game on reporting in enemy territory. And I'm dead serious about this. I had the whole arrangement. And I got up Monday this week. I'm like, hey, we got a game on Thursday. That's the first game back. Doing my coverage plan, how I was going to do it outside of Wells Fargo Center, post game in enemy territory, and I was prepared to get booed. And then a few hours later, after I confirmed, not till the 17th. But safety comes first, and that's okay.
Before we do the game, I do want to kind of get your idea. So New York just passed that they're going to allow, 10,000 people in the game?
Yeah.
You got to get tested first. You got to get a test done within 72 hours. Would you go?
Me personally,
in New York, would you go to the Rangers or Islanders to go see the Devils play?
Oh, well, I'm going.
I know that
full
changes
face
things.
mask.
That's why I'm kind of.
I will go in full face mask. I will be, because the problem is, Nick, this is just me. Any sporting events I go to on the road, the fights always find, like I'm a fight magnet. I don't even have to do anything. I can go and sit by myself in street clothes, and suddenly there's two people fighting right next to me. And when there's fighting, physical altercation, I try to leave, but how do you distance from that? So to answer your question, if I'm going to go in my full body armor. I'm a germaphobe, so I'm going to have antibacterial wipes in my back pocket. I'm going to have my mask. I'm going to triple up because the Rangers
what you got to
do.
What you got to do, because the easiest thing to do is you get the mask and the shield combo. And then,
Yes.
then you're in good shape.
Yeah, great shape. Great
Yeah.
shape.
And you got to get one of those good masks. I got the triple ply mask, and I always feel protected. I still don't go anywhere, but I got to go to work, so that's where I wear them. But
you know what? Well, once I get Dave Brown, I'm going to come back with my I think it's a P95 mask. It's the full face shield. I posted on Facebook before in the past. Like, this thing is like meant for chemical warfare practically. So I'll wear that. And also with the full face shield, if somebody punches me in the face, hey, I got a little protection, just like a full face shield in hockey, So, and Coach Tom is in there as well. Hey, Coach Tom, I don't have any jelly crimpets for you, but that's okay. But I got to meet you in Philly one of these days, Coach Tom. Coach Tom. Yeah, I found my old Penn State ice hockey jacket the other day, and
did you?
Yeah, it's like a fat guy in a little coat. I think I gained some weight since those days.
Oh, well, I've gained some. I still got my quarantine weight on. I hit the workout hard yesterday. And I was like, oof. I was like, how long did I work out for? I looked at it was 15 minutes. I was sweating like a banshee, and I was like, what's going on? I used to be svelte.
Well, let me get Dave Brown on. So be right back, folks.
Yeah, I'm excited. Tonight's game is going to be fun. It's a prospects game. I'm just going to ask different prospect questions because I'm very sad there's no Devils games. I'm going to be honest. I really just want to talk about the Devils. It was so exciting to talk about hockey again. Guys, I waited 10 months to talk about Devils hockey. 10 months. We did a podcast every week except for one. Sam still did the podcast last week. I've done a podcast every single week except for one. And to go back to not having hockey again, and to see the interest wane, and to see we're still writing, but I don't want to keep talking about the daily COVID update. So we try to get creative, but people aren't on the internet looking for Devil stuff because we're not playing. So it's frustrating. I can't wait to have them back. They canceled another week's of games. That's fair. I'll be so excited once I have them back because Nico will probably be back. Sammy will hopefully be in the lineup. Palmieri and Zajac will hopefully be back. Blackwood will be back. I want to see what this team looks like with a full lineup because we haven't yet. And I'm curious to see what happens with the goalie situation. We've talked about it before. Once you come back, then you got to figure it out because then you got Comrie, Dell, Wedgwood, Blackwood. Blackwood's obviously staying. I think they stick with Dell. That's what I think. He's walking into a weird situation. He's coming from the Maple Leafs in Canada where everything's honky-dory. He gets to the Devils, and it's like, okay, you're under protocol. It's okay, cool, quarantine for a little while and spend some time and just kind of chill for a bit, get used to the area, find an apartment, whatever. Oh, by the way, we're postponed for 3 weeks. I guess it gives them time to figure it out. Because if they put Dell on waivers, he's going back to Toronto or he's going somewhere. Someone will claim him. Comrie, I think they could sneak him through. Wedgwood, maybe they could sneak him through. They got to put one through. You have to have a player on the taxi squad. In fact, I don't even know who's on the taxi squad. Oh, they put Brodeur on the taxi squad. That's right. So they got Sen playing tonight. Actually, no. Cormier played tonight, which was interesting. He played. Sen's on the team. McCormier played. So that was a weird development. Nico Dawes, another goalie. He's in the organization. So the Devils have a lot of goalies all over the place. It's very interesting.
Oh, I want to show you my fighting mask. my fighting safety mask. It's one of these. It's I can wear this into Madison Square Garden because they stink.
There you go.
You see that?
Does that actually work?
Oh yeah, I mean it's pretty hardcore. So yeah, it's it's got this, it's got that, and then there's these filters that you attach on it. You see these badass filters? Yeah, on the Facebook Live on the video stream because people do listen to our podcast on demand wherever you find our podcasts, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeart app, and Spotify, and somewhere in India, we are the #1 Devil's podcast in all of India. But anyway, so that's what we do.
That looks like something the 6th most famous Batman villain would wear.
Hey, you know what? You know who else is a villain? Our next guest, Dave Brown.
Oh, boy.
Because he's already talking smack off air that he's going to dominate me after I kind of told him I think I'm going to suck at this game. But from Pucks and Pitchforks blog, he's a contributor. He's a good friend of ours, and he's next to the Stanley Cup. Dave Brown. Dave, are you ready? Are you ready?
With that intro, how could I not be ready? I'm ready to renew recovery. Do it.
All right, Dave. I don't know if you heard from earlier in the podcast, but
I have to take advantage. Go ahead.
Oh, you can. No, you can go.
No, I was telling Sam, I'm just going to have to exploit his weakness because he doesn't seem very confident. So that just means that, I just have to, take over and dominate. So we'll see.
I'm going to have to take some cheap shot tactics like the old days when Ty Domi used to elbow certain people on our team.
He's suspended the season for that if he pulled that off. So. Nowadays.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't suspend Sam for the season. That would make things complicated for the game. But so tonight we're going to talk about prospects. That's the main part of the game. There's no real rhyme or reason to the rules. Each one has a little different of a rule, and I'll explain it as we get to each question. But I have a couple years worth of prospects here. But we're going to start with prospect rankings. I've looked back in time, and then I've looked at current prospect rankings. But we talked to Scott Wheeler tonight, so I want to talk about his rankings first. So how we're going to do this is, like I said, I'm going to ask a question. It's usually either going to be a numbers question or a name the players type of question where we have a very specific winner on each question, and then the winner of the most categories wins the game. So first category, I'm looking at Scott Wheeler's rankings right now. I want you to tell me where he had Igor Sharangovich ranked. Just give me the number. He does a top 20. So, Dave, we'll start with you. Where was Igor Sharangovich ranked?
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of looking at prospect rankings the past couple of days, just from a variety of sources, and I actually think that I might have stumbled upon his. I hope I did at least. But I will say definitely wasn't top 10. I'm thinking in the 15 to 18 range. I'm going to say that's rolled 16.
All right, Sam, where do you think he ranked?
$23rd.
You got to listen, Sam. It's a top 20.
Oh.
Dave gets the point. He was 11th. 11th in this year's rankings.
I thought you guys said top 25. Sorry.
No, Pucks and Pitchforks does the top 25. Scott Wheeler does the top 20. Get it right. All right, so I went back and I looked at Scott Wheeler's 2020 rankings of Devils prospects. Now, remember, these came after the Taylor Hall trade, but these came before the Blake Coleman, Andy Green, and Sammy Vatanen trades that added all those prospects. So the Taylor Hall trade prospects are in there. So, Sam, you go first this time. Where did he rank Michael McLeod last year? Now, remember, he does these rankings in January, so it would be about in the middle of the season.
Number 6.
Dave, what's your guess?
I mean, at this point last year, I don't want to say that he was a top 6 prospect in the organization. I think there was some sort of, I don't think he's top 5 or 6. I want to
say 9, Dave. Say 9.
I was just going to say 9. I was just going to say 9.
Like McLeod 9?
That's terrible. I hate both of you. Sam, you got it exactly right. Michael McLeod was 6th last year.
Wow. So
a point for Sam. All right, so we're going to go back in time a little bit. We're going to go to 2015. 2015, right after the draft in 2015. I brought up a Bleacher Report rankings of the best, they just ranked every prospect pool in the NHL right after the 2015 draft. Where did the Devils rank? 1 through 30. Dave, you go first.
Well, it couldn't have been very good because the Devils had plenty of bad drafts between Zajak's year and 2015. So I'll roll with 29th.
Sam?
Dave, you said 29th?
I did, yeah.
That's what I said, yeah.
I'm gonna play the Price is Right game. I'll say 30.
Sam, you got it exactly right again. The Devils were ranked dead last in the prospect pool in 2015. Wow, Sam, you're bringing it hard here.
Yeah.
I'm actually getting lucky. That's because I think I'm like the New York Knicks starting the season. Like, no one told me that I couldn't win.
It was the self-deprecation attitude that's putting you over the top now.
It's something like that. Okay. So let's look at 2014. 2014. So think back. Take a second. What I'm going to do is I have the top 20 prospects of 2014. We'll go back and forth. Each time you got to name one prospect, and it'll be like catchphrase where whoever can't figure it out first loses. So Sam, we'll start with you. Name a prospect that was on the top 20 list. This is Hockey's Future top 20 list in 2014.
It's definitely not Rod Pelly. Definitely not Matthew Corrente. John Quenneville?
John Quenneville is on the list. He was 6th. 6th on the list. It's funny, they compared him on this list to Adam Henrique. Didn't work out that way.
This is a beautiful disaster right here. We're thinking back to our top 20 prospects of 2014. Beautiful disaster.
It's very interesting. It's a fun little game.
Right. It really is. Got to dig deep here. Let's go with, I believe they had the 30th or 29th overall pick. Due to the Kovalchuk penalty, I think they were awarded them 30 or 29th pick that year. I think it was Stefan Matteau, so I'm going to say him.
Hold on. Yeah, Stephane Matteau is 4th on this list, 29th overall. That actually came in the year that they made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Quenneville was the pick they took with the 30th overall. But Matteau is still on the list, so either way, that is correct.
Okay, either way. All right. Sounds good. I'll take it.
Sam, you're up.
Would Adam Larson actually qualify? Or was he already considered a veteran?
I mean, I don't.
I know.
You'd have to
I'm
look
an
back at what
ass. But he played quite a bit. Reed Boucher?
Reed Boucher is on this list. He is. Where is he? He's 3rd. 3rd on this list. Reed Boucher.
Wow.
All right, Dave. Going back to you.
I pulled that one out of nowhere.
Oh.
He was our shootout specialist.
All right. I feel like at that point in time, they had quite a bit of defensemen that were like highly regarded but never panned out. Let's go with he was just traded to Nashville, I believe, just recently. Steve Santini.
Steve Santini is 5th on the list. 5th. All right, Sam.
Oh, boy. I'm going to have to really use my brain here. Oh, boy. I'm trying to think of any scrubs that came up.
There's still good players on this list.
Trying to think. This is tough. Trying to think. 2014, I mean, Yager was on the team, right? So
Yeah, I don't think he counts as a prospect.
No. I'm trying to think of, players in that era, which is really like about 7 years ago. Scott Wedgwood?
Scott Wedgwood is on the list. He's 11th. Scott Wedgwood is 11th. All right, Dave.
I'm living on the edge with this.
All right. I'm going to continue with the defenseman theme. Damon Severson.
Damon Severson is number 2. He was the name I was looking for. Number 2 is Damon Severson. Sam, right back to you.
He turned out to be all right.
He's not bad. He's having a good season.
Not bad. I mean, fan base likes to, give him some stuff, give him some unwarranted hate, but he's overall pretty good.
They give him some lip. It's fine. All right, Sam, what are you thinking?
I think Josephson had been playing for too long at that point, because to me he was always a forever prospect. This is tough. Keith Kincaid?
Keith Kincaid is not on the list.
Oh, gotta be kidding me.
Nope. He had graduated that year from the prospect list and became an NHL goaltender. Y'all missed number 1, who is John Merrill. Y'all missed Blake Coleman, who was number 10. Joshua Jacobs was number 8. Miles Wood was number, 18? those were the notables. Miles Bell was a player I fell in love with, but he obviously never made the big show. But he was number 13. Reese Scarlett, 12. Blast from the Past. Graham Black. He's a player that fell off the face of the earth. Seth Helgeson. Hoof.
Oh,
That one didn't work out either. But yeah.
A lot of defense.
All right.
A lot of defense.
Yeah, none of them were very good. All right, so here is my final question. Tiebreaker. You are 2-2 right now. We will let Dave go first. I'm looking at the Dauber prospect rankings of the Devils prospect pool in 2017, right after the draft, where the Devils took Nico Hischier. Dave, what were the Devils' rankings according to Dauber prospects?
For just that draft alone, right?
No, for the overall prospect pool. So Zaka, McLeod is a part of it.
Gotcha. Okay. I want to still say not very good. I mean, okay, you had Nico, you had McLeod, who was
Butcher is also signed at this point, so they considered him a prospect.
Okay, gotcha. I will say, I don't say still very good. I'm going to say, I'm going to go with 19.
19. Okay. Sam, what's your pick?
21.
Sam? You lost again.
You got
Dave is the winner. Dave.
Come back.
The Devils were ranked 17th in prospect pool that year. 17th.
Wow.
People were big on Nico. They were big on Butcher, adding to a deep or a weak defensive prospect pool. 17 for the Devils. But Dave, taking home the gold again.
Back to back. 2 in a row.
Wow. That was a tough game. That was definitely I was getting lucky, but you know what? For a guy that admitted to Dave prior to coming on that I was going to absolutely lose, I actually was like in it. Just like the New York Giants.
You got two
towards the end of
exactly
the
right.
season. Yeah.
Listen, if you took commanding victories where you took your victory, so I got to give you props there.
It was all luck.
Isn't there
It was all luck.
Second place to second place.
Yeah, second place ain't bad. We'll send your silver medal in the mail.
Oh, great.
If you ain't first, you're last.
There you go. So, Dave, you had a piece come out, I believe it was Tuesday. So tell the Pucks and Pitchforks listeners and readers about that piece you sent out.
Yeah, since there's not a lot of game action, unfortunately, I was recently doing, some pieces about, 3 observations I saw from this game or that game. But, since there's no game action now, had to pivot a little bit and do some trade content. And we've seen some young, disgruntled hockey players out there recently with Pierre-Luc Dubois, Jack Roslovic, and Patrick Laine. So some of these young guys are getting their wishes and getting traded. So looking a little bit deeper, you're hearing guys like Vince Dunn, who I've talked about plenty of times, on Pucks and Pitchforks. Vince Dunn's name's been out there. Victor Mete, another defenseman from Montreal, has been scratched recently. And Sam Bennett from Calgary, number 4 overall pick, I believe, in 2014. His name's swirling around. He's not happy there. So I really, took a look at who could be a potential fit for the Devils moving forward. And I had fun writing it. It's always interesting to write up some guys who are young, have potential, and could help the team. So I enjoyed writing that one, and hopefully, others did as well.
Well, Dave, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate you having us, and I look forward to your next piece.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot for having me. Always fun, and take care. Talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Dave. That is Dave Brown, Pucks and Pitchforks blog. You can find him on Twitter at BrownieNJD82. Making the comeback, beating me, which is very difficult to do. But you know what? I try not to be a sore loser. I congratulated him, Nick, even though it was very tough. Very tough.
I mean, Sam, it would be hard for you to be a sore loser. You lose a lot.
Stop it. Just stop it. Just let
I
me
can't
lose in
talk
peace.
because you always beat me. I'm 0-2 against you, so I can't talk.
Well, it's good that the Bing Devils are winning. We're getting closer and closer resuming. We got this podcast off the ground. You got anything coming up soon, Nick?
I'll have a couple pieces. I don't know what they are. They just come into my head and I write them. So that's what I got. I'm sorry I'm not more specific. I usually promise you something. I got a couple pieces out there on, like I said, I had that Lions piece that checks to what you think. Go look to see what I think is going to be the forward lines. I'll probably do something on the defense before the weekend's over. I'll get something out Friday morning on whatever comes to my head. Maybe I'll write a PK Subban love piece since everybody knows that I'm on the PK train.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'll be reading it on Pucks and Pitchforks blog, on pucksandpitchforks.com. Sorry, I added the blog in there. But
You can read a blog.
It's the best blog out there. Best Devils blog. Vinny Parisi, one of my favorite writers. You're one of my favorite writers. Dave Brown's one of my favorite writers. David Leibowitz is one of my favorite writers. Matt Junio, I like his writing. Yeah. It's good stuff. That's what we do.
Vinny Parisi. He's been banging them out on this pause.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to, troll Vinny on Twitter, try to bait him into a Twitter war, but no, he's too busy just writing articles right now. He's in the zone.
He's got things to do.
He's the workhorse. Yeah, well, we're going to be back soon. I guess this Sunday. It's Valentine's Day. But I think we'll be back at 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll have to find out. No, we'll be back. I'm just kidding around. We just took a week off.
Back.
We took a bye week.
You're refreshed.
We're back. Yeah, we're back. And I want to thank Dave, Scott Wheeler for coming on. Until next time, let's go Devils.